That's like really generous. I think you should wait. See if I kind of give you enough value to justify a round of applause. As Nick said, these are challenging times for newspapers and for actually a lot of publishers. The old model where they could control access to content, so running and maintaining a news gathering machine with all the journalists and copy takers and typesetters and so on, then controlling access to that content, having the power to therefore command mass audiences, and consequently the ability to attract ad revenue to reach those audiences, that model no longer holds. Now, right, we're at SIFT Digital, right? So we understand the impact of the internet on disrupting that model. But recently, so since about mid-2014, 2015, the problem has become acute. And I'm just going to spell it out because we often encounter readers who are otherwise terribly well informed that don't understand how an organisation that has 180 million uniques a month cannot be swimming in money. So let me just spell it out. First of all, with the drop in print circulation has come a drop in print advertising. So that's the first thing. That's not entirely unexpected. The second factor is the shift of digital advertising budgets primarily to Facebook and Google. So I think I heard recently 85 cents in every dollar of digital advertising money goes to Facebook and Google. So the amount of money that's left for publishers, even big digital publishers like The Guardian, has shrunk. The shift from desktop to mobile had a big impact. We were actually pretty successful at monetizing desktop. Mobile is that much more challenging. And the shift from display advertising to programmatic has also had a downward pressure on yields. And then finally, the rise of ad blockers, which we were only really beginning to see about a year ago, has had another sort of negative effect on advertising revenue. So the platform is well and truly burning. And one solution to falling revenue is to cut costs. And The Guardian and quite a few other publishers have certainly embraced that approach. But another solution is to develop new revenue streams. And in The Guardian's case, one of the revenue streams that I've been tasked with developing is revenue direct from readers. So the way that some news organisations, and those of you that maybe read The Times or the FT or the New York Times, the way they extract money from readers is through a paywall. But The Guardian, as you know, doesn't have a paywall. And so for us, the answer is membership. So from one angle, you can think of membership as the mechanism that we have devised to extract revenue from readers without putting up a paywall. But that is quite a narrow, sort of self-interested way of looking at it. But I just wanted to emphasize the financial imperative. This isn't some kind of vanity project. This is something that we see as pretty essential to making the future of The Guardian sustainable. It's approaching its 200th year anniversary, and one would hate to be on the team when it crashed into the ground. So I want to just take a step back. I want to look at membership a little bit more holistically. And what I want to emphasize is what I'm going to show you today is correct at the time of going to press, as we say in the news industry. The concept has evolved considerably since we launched it in September 2014. And we expect it to change further over the next year. In fact, that's what my team is working on at the moment. But I'm going to do today and see where that gets us. So start with the why. So membership is a scheme designed to allow loyal readers to get closer to the subjects that matter to them. So it's very much aimed at loyal readers, and it's very much about providing opportunities for them to get closer either to the journalists or to topics that particularly interests them. Yes, it allows readers to show their support for our editorial values by making a financial contribution, and therefore, as I've just said, lessen The Guardian's dependence on advertising revenue by increasing the proportion of income that comes direct from readers. Just to be clear, when we talk about reader revenue, I sort of think of it in these 4 buckets: give, get, join, and buy. So give donors who support journalism with one-off contributions. And you may have seen in the last 10 weeks we have been testing, simply asking readers to consider making a contribution. We don't call it a donation. We don't call it a donation for the simple fact that we're not a charity. And people associate the word donation with charitable giving. We're not a charity, but we're asking people to make a one-off contribution. Can I just see, because it was quite a large number, who's seen that? Just seen it. Okay, so a fair proportion. We're exposing that to about 10% of our audience at the moment. We haven't decided that it's going to be a long-term part of our reader revenue strategy, but we are trying it at the moment, and I expect that we'll continue to try it until the end of the year. Get, so you can subscribe. You can buy content products from us and subscribe to them. So the gentleman here at the front, I think he said was a subscriber to the, we have a premium app, but you can subscribe to, there's a tablet edition. You can obviously buy the newspaper and get that delivered. So there are subscriptions. Join is the membership scheme, which offers some special benefits. I'll explain those in a moment. And then buy is sort of just e-commerce, and we have quite a lively event program where you can see journalists doing their stuff live on stage. We have a bookshop, Guardian holiday website, a dating product called Soulmates, and a couple of other things as well. So these are the different sources of reader revenue. I wanted to speak a bit more in detail there about memberships. I just want to explain. This next chart's got a bit of detail. I want to talk to the detail. What I'm trying to show you is that membership, as you'd probably imagine these schemes work, has got different tiers. You pay different amounts of money at each tier, and you kind of get different benefits depending on how much you pay. What interested me was when we originally devised the scheme, there were only 3 tiers. There was the friend tier, partner tier, and patron tier. And so we recruited all these people, all these emails, with a view to upselling them. And we were actually unable to upsell people from £0 to £15 a month. And then 6 months in, based on sort of user feedback and so on, we decided to introduce this £5 a month tier. And that was the key to unlocking the support. So we suddenly found we were able to upsell people from £0 to £5 a month, and we're also able to upsell people from £5 a month to £15 a month. So the introduction of that £5 a month tier proved to be pivotal. You will have seen here that some of the benefits here relate to an event program. And when we created the membership scheme, we were sort of conscious that there needs to be some element of benefit in return, some kind of transactional side to it. And initially, it was all predicated around an event program. And so you can see some of the benefits. You get some tickets or priority booking or 20% discount. I'll just tell you 60 seconds worth about this event program. So we have regular events. So regular events, sort of film club. We have a gaming night where we review up-and-coming games. We have book club. We've got The Guardian's got a very popular podcast called Football Weekly. It's a weekly podcast. We do a live event. We call it Football Weekly Live. Slightly ironic because it's every 6 weeks. And that particular property has grown so popular now that when we run it in London, we sort of move it around the country. We put it on in the Palladium, so that sells out 2,100 seats, and that's a kind of slightly more irreverent version of the football podcast live on stage. So we have regular events, so they run every month or every couple of weeks. We do topical events, so some of these are planned. We will do a topical event around the outcome of the American presidential election. We did something around Brexit and so on. Some of them happen very quickly in reaction to news events. We did something the day after the terrorist attacks on Charlie Hebdo's offices in Paris. We have keynote speeches. So these are pretty high-profile people who come and get interviewed live on stage. We had Naomi Klein, Russell Brand, Ken Clark, Jimmy Page. We've got Ian Wright, the footballer, coming up. So just big sort of keynote speeches. We run a couple of festivals. We're about to get into, we do a sort of Hay Festival for kids, sort of children's books. Last year, we're not doing it this year, but next year we do something called Alternative Party Conference. And then we do masterclasses. You might have seen these advertised separately, where you can learn about infographics or how to write a breakthrough novel or how to polish your website. And then finally, and it's slightly different, what we call Guardian Local. And Guardian Local, so all of these kind of use our journalistic talent, whereas Guardian Local doesn't actually use journalists. Those are events that are set in places that we review. So primarily restaurants and cultural things like exhibitions. So if we give a good review to a particular restaurant, then we will try and book the restaurant out exclusively for one evening and hold an event for members where they get to hear the chef talk about, his or her story, the provenance of the ingredients, the story about the dishes that you're eating. Or if it's an exhibition, we'll try and have a private view and the curator might talk about how they've put the exhibition together. So we do events that sort of hero some of the subject matter that we cover in our culture and lifestyle sections. So that's kind of a bit about Guardian Live. You're probably thinking, so how's that all going then? So this is where we are. We're here. That's where I reckon we'll end up at the end of the financial year. So I'll just explain what we've got here. So we launched the scheme in September 2014. Our financial year runs until the end of March. Up the side, you've got the number of what we call supporter equivalents. So because people pay different amounts of money, it just becomes too confusing if people say, how many members have you got? And you say, well, we got so many supporters and so many partners and so many patrons. And so we rebase everything into one currency. Imagine everyone was paying £5 a month. So we have slightly fewer actual bodies than supporter equivalents, because some people one partner is 3 supporter equivalents. Yeah? So we are at basically about 75,000 supporter equivalents. We, at the start of this year, we were kind of around 20,000 or so. And I reckon we'll finish the year just over 110,000. Our target, by the way, by the end of 18-19 is to get to 1 million. So, that continues, has to get even steeper, in fact. This was an interesting inflection point because it marks the moment at which we decided to tie membership in far more closely with our very best journalism. And so instead of just talking about membership and inviting people to join using what we would call ad components, the ad units that we would otherwise sell to Unilever or other advertisers. Instead of using those components, we've actually embedded the ask for membership within the editorial furniture. So it might be in the stand first, the words that appear under the pick and main headline. It could be in the copy, it could be at the end of the article. But if you read any of our coverage, say, of the Panama Papers or around Brexit, or if you read The Guardian's US edition, The Counted, then you might well have come across a membership ask embedded there. And doing it that way has really kicked up conversion. So that is my sort of quick gallop through membership, because I thought I would try and ensure that we had time just in case you had any questions. Oh. That's
thank you very much, David. I'm sure that there will, I certainly hope that there will be some questions. Do we have one of our roving mics? Here we go. I've got it. I'm just overflowing with microphones.
Hiya. How much of that sort of 75,000 really impressive graph is coming from like using your brand to sell things which other people would sell, like events or soulmates and things like that? And how much is coming from trying to get people to donate to something that they're not used to donating in journalism? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are used to donating in journalism.
I think that's a really good question. So that graph was of members. So that's not subscribers, it's not e-commerce revenue, and it isn't contributors. So those one-off contribution tests that you've been seeing, that is not reflected in that graph of members. That's incremental revenue. So it is, I mean, to answer your question, not wanting to get bogged down in the detail, if you sign up because you want to join Soulmates and we get some of your data, that doesn't drive the membership numbers. If, however, you want to buy a ticket to an event, and so you want to go to a Guardian Football Weekly Live, you have to become at least a free member so that we get your data. What that graph was showing was paying members. So we have, I don't know actually, nearly 200,000 free members. So I just regard those as a prospect pool. Does that answer your question?
I think I guess in the language of your presentation, out of give, get, join, and buy, how well is Give doing?
So how well is Give doing? So we've been running the test for 10 weeks. We've raised just over £500,000. We have received donations from 12,000 people. We have capped the donation. You can't make a bigger donation than £2,000. I think we've had one donation of £1,000, something like that. So the average donation, we've been testing where to ask. We've been testing the exact language you use around ask. We've been testing how much to ask for. So, is it predefined? Do we give you an option box that says 5, 10, 15, 20, or should it say 10, 20, 30, 40? In doing that, we've moved the average contribution from £5 to £35. But what we haven't been doing is trying to figure out what the maximum amount we can do. We're just trying to understand all the elements so that we can make a reasonably informed guess as to what the size of the prize might be before we decide whether or not we're going to pursue it. Yeah, so that's why we don't count the numbers. The £500,000 is great, but it's sort of that's not what the exercise has been about, raising that money. And just so you know, we did one. It turned out we didn't know it was going to be a big appeal, but we put one appeal around the Brexit coverage. Kath Viner, the editor-in-chief, wrote an article and said, if you value our Brexit coverage, please help fund it. That one article alone drove half of that 500,000. That drove £250,000.
It's a two-part question, but I'll make it quick. I'm interested about your aspiration, 2018-19, 1 million members. If my memory is good enough, that probably exceeds the print circulation at the height of The Guardian, which then opens the question, how much of this is UK at the moment, and what are your predictions for sort of like UK and international membership?
Yeah, so 1 million would be way in excess of the, certainly in sort of living memory. So print circulations are, 150, 200,000. That's sort of what, a daily, weekend print circulation might be. So the Guardian, just so you know, has a UK edition, and if you look in the top corner, you can change edition. We have a US edition. It's not printed in the US, but we have a large team, mainly based in New York, but we got people in Washington and San Francisco, and so we have dedicated journalists covering US stories, and you can get the US edition. There's also an Australian edition as well, which is produced in Sydney. We have a completely separate outfit there. Again, it's not printed, it's only a digital edition. So the target of the 1 million is global. Of the 75,000, about 18,000 come from the US and Australia. So, but most of the testing we do, we expose to UK audiences. Just for the simple reason that my team is almost all in the UK, and it's quicker and easier to test stuff. And if we get feedback, we like to be able to respond to readers really quickly. So the time zone things, play to our advantage if we just test in the UK. But absolutely, it's got to be a sort of global sort of project.
Any more questions for David before we move into the panel discussion? No? Well, you'll have another opportunity to ask him. So really, really insightful and great to hear that you're moving towards a model of sustainability for a news, a broadcast, that most people in this room are big advocates and supporters of, and maybe we need to dig into our pockets and support it even more. But thank you very much.
Thank you.